and then I'll give it a few seconds. Then I'm going to do a roll call. So when I say your name, will you put your microphone on and say here? I think that's probably the best way of doing it. And then don't forget to switch your microphone. Excuse me. Don't forget to switch your microphone off again. Right. So here we are. This is the first virtual meeting of the Communities in Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is appearing in many bedrooms and dining rooms across the county. And the first item on the agenda is attendance. And I'm just going to start reading the names. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Benyon.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Carty.
Here.
Councillor Dunbar.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Dunn.
Here.
Councillor Gallagher. I know he's there somewhere. Is he there, Sean?
Councillor Gallagher isn't in the meeting at the moment.
Okay, I wonder what's happened there. Councillor Gibson.
Present.
Councillor Heppel.
Present.
Councillor Pattinson.
Here.
And me, I'm here also. So I'm just going to, presumably Brian will catch us up. I don't think it's...
He's not on my screen, Jeff.
Okay, well, there we are. He's obviously decided not to come. So
I'll contact Councillor Gallagher and
we had a pre-meeting with him, and he's obviously just...
I'll get in touch with him and help him get on the meeting.
So apology. The first proper item on the agenda is apologies for absence, but we're all here, so that's fine. Minute of the previous meeting, which seems so long ago now, was the 4th of March 2020. They have been circulated. I can't sign them as a true record, but I suppose Sean will send it to me and I'll send it back. Is that how it works? I'll take that as a yes.
Chair.
We'll catch up one day, Jeff, yes.
Yeah. Nicola, yes.
Chair, if you could sign and maybe return the copy that you've got within your set of papers, if it's...
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, excellent.
Thank you, Chair.
No trouble. So I'll agree that. Is that right? Declaration of members' interest. I'll just remind you, has there anybody got anything to add to what they've already declared in the yearly submission? Doesn't look as though anybody has, so that's fine. We're now on 4, which is a scrutiny of cabinet reports, and the first one is the Northumberland Coast Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Management Plan 2020 to 2024. And I think Kath is, are we doing Kath first and then David? Is this how this is going to work? Is that right?
Jeff, it should be me as cabinet member for this one, I think.
Sorry, yes, it's the other way around. I beg your pardon. Thanks, John. So you're starting and then David's going to follow. Is that right?
Well, there's very little to introduce, really. As far as I'm concerned, it's something that has to be done. The old management plan is coming to its end, and this is a plan to take us through to 2024. But I'll let David give you all the details.
Right. Fire away, David.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Yeah, so as Councillor Riddle said, we have an obligation under the Countryside and Rights of Way Act to have a management plan setting out how we'll conserve and enhance the AONB and to review that at least once every 5 years. This has been a really strange time to do the review, partly because of all the consequences of Brexit and a lot of the mechanisms that we have to influence the management of the AONB, such as agricultural policy, are obviously changing profoundly at the moment. So there's still some uncertainty about the sort of mechanisms that will be available to work with landowners, for example, on conservation projects. And the other reason is because government commissioned a review of national parks and AONBs a few years ago, the Glover review, and that's reported to government last autumn, and we're expecting a response to the very wide-ranging recommendations of the review this autumn. So, as I say, it's a very uncertain time to do the review, and for that reason, it's really been a very light touch review. There aren't significant changes compared to the previous management plan, but we would expect a rather more wide-ranging review next time around. So really, the purpose of the plan is to help guide the different council functions that may have an impact on the conservation and enhancement of the special qualities of the AONB. That's its statutory purpose, but we also anticipate it'll be used more broadly by other organisations whose work has an influence on the AONB to help guide them as well. The review process has involved, we've had two rounds of public consultation. We have had a number of consultation workshops within the AONB partnership itself. We've had a workshop with the chairs of parish councils within the AONB. And we've also been doing some work with officers from different council departments whose work is relevant to the AONB. So that's how we've gone about obtaining views about the plan.
Okay, did you want to just mention the other note about the extension
Yeah.
of the area before we go to questions?
Yeah, certainly. So so the plan itself is will be going before Cabinet for adoption, but I've also done a note. You may recall last time we met, there was some discussion about the potential to review the boundaries of the AONB. I think there was particular interest in the potential to extend it southwards into George Bay. And I said I would provide an update. So that note is just for yourselves by way of an update.
And you're recommending that we wait, really, aren't you?
Yeah, so the problem we have at the moment is the system for reviewing national parks and AONBs is through Natural England, and essentially it's barely functioning because of various pressures, not least budget pressures. So based on current work rates, the Glover review team calculated that there's basically a queue of proposals for boundary reviews and new areas that would take 50 years to get through at current work rates. That's 50, not 15, which is clearly not a satisfactory system. The Glover review is making recommendations for the establishment of a national landscape service to oversee national parks and AONBs, and that service would take charge of the review process and introduce a far quicker and easier system. So yes, my recommendation, we know that DEFRA is very keen on setting up the National Landscape Service and has got a number of work streams underway at the moment to look into that in more detail. So certainly my recommendation would be to wait to engage with the new National Landscape Service once that's up and running. I mean, the alternative would be to start preparing the evidence to get something into the old system. But as I say, given a 50-year queue, there seems little benefit in rushing something to go to the old system. We may as well wait for what we hope is a new and much better system to come into effect. And the other problem we've got looking southwards is the Highthorn surface mine, a decision on which has been imminent for a considerable period of time, and remains imminent. But we're none the wiser at this stage.
Okay. Any questions for David or John? Alan? You need to put
Okay,
your
thanks,
microphone
Chair.
on. That's it.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Can, yeah.
Yeah, good. I've got two questions, I think. One is, I mean, I don't have a copy of the draft plan. I think it would have been useful to have seen that, Chair. That was one point. Secondly, it describes in the report some of the issues facing the AONLB. Does that include second homes and the lack of affordable housing? Is that one of the issues?
It is, and this is something we've been doing a lot of work with parish councils as they've been preparing neighbourhood plans, particularly. So the North Northumberland Neighbourhood Plan now has an obligation that any new housing has to be for permanent occupation. And we're at the moment, we're just in the process as an AONB partnership of getting information from all the parish councils about the proportion of their housing stock, which is holiday let or second homes. So that's something we did about 5 years ago, and we're just updating that so that we've got an accurate picture. But neighbourhood plans have given us a real opportunity to address that issue, at least in relation to any new housing. It's a very difficult issue to deal with in terms of the existing housing stock. But we are making progress in terms of new housing.
Before I bring Councillor Dunn in, did Councillor Heppel want to come back?
Yeah, if I can, Chair, just on that point about second homes. I mean, I understand the point about neighbourhood plans, and I've seen some of them, obviously. What I wondered was, and I can't remember, that's why I'm asking the question, does the Northumberland local plan cover that point as well?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Is that all right, Councillor Heppel, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Dunn?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just glancing at the plan, there's a lot of emphasis on supporting initiatives that promote public transport and encourage visitors to make car-free journeys.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think the reduced capacity that we'll probably have of public transport due to social distancing measures will have on the plan?
Yes, this is certainly not something we'd envisaged when we were preparing the plan. And clearly for health reasons, people are being encouraged to not only to use their cars, but to avoid car sharing and use cars with one person in each car, which is the worst possible scenario from our point of view. It really depends how the situation unfolds and how long the pandemic is going to be an issue. We have been making excellent progress. We've done some really good work with the REVA, and they've increased the frequency of the Coast and Castles bus routes. They've increased the season over which it operates, and it's becoming one of the most profitable routes they run, which is absolutely fantastic. But as you say, COVID-19 has the potential to undo an awful lot of that good work. But it's so difficult at the moment to envisage how long that problem is going to run for. So I'm afraid I can't really give a clearer answer than that.
Okay, anybody else, Sean? I don't see anyone else indicating, so perhaps I could just ask David on that COVID-19 point. Do you think at some point before it goes through cabinet that there should be some sort of, I don't know, COVID checking, or, you know, because none of us know how any of this is going to work out. So do you think that we should be starting to think about COVID-19 impact on everything we do, And just while we're on that, I think, you know, on the back of all of the documents we'll get, we've got the box here with impacts. We've got a carbon reduction box, and I think perhaps at some point we should now be having a COVID-19 box. I realise this isn't specifically you, David, but I just think all documents should have a box on there that says what COVID-19 action we've taken or what impact on the report COVID-19 will have, because it's going to be here for a while, and it needs to be in the front of all our minds before we decide to do whatever we decide to do. Even if you're going to come back and say, well, yes, we've taken it all into account, but we don't think it's going to make all that much difference. I think we have to have thought about it. But anyway.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I recall in the fortnight running up to lockdown, sitting down with the team and amending people's work plans almost every day as new restrictions came in, and by the next day, everything we'd amended would be obsolete because there were more restrictions. And I think it is time now to start to take a longer view and assume that some of these restrictions are going to go on for some time.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Dunn has made me think about the sort of the bus service and it hadn't even occurred to me that there could be an impact on that. You know, if social distance is going to go on forever, or certainly for, you know, the foreseeable future, then, you know, 56-seater bus isn't going to be able to take 56 people, is it?
No.
20 or something, or whatever it is. So, you know, that does impact on the plan, doesn't it?
It does.
Right, is there anyone else wants to say anything else? No, well, in that case, we shall thank David and Councillor Riddle very much for their presence and input. If they want to stay, they can, but if they need to go and do something more productive, then feel free to do it. And I think the next thing on the agenda is sorry, I must just say, do we accept the recommendation from David that says we're going to wait until things are clearer before we try and move the boundaries? Yes, Rupert. You need to put your microphone on.
Yeah, it's just I thought you were sort of going to take a vote there.
No, just what we're saying is, I don't like taking votes. I think we just all accept.
Yeah.
What David's saying is the only sensible thing we can do.
I do, yes.
Yeah, and I think everybody else seems to be nodding, so that's fine. And the other thing is that I think we should be asking the thought of having a COVID-19 box on all of the paperwork is quite a good idea too. Does that seem to be? Everybody seems to be acknowledging that might be quite a good idea. So I guess Sean needs to take that and do whatever he needs to do with it. Maybe speak to Richard about it or something.
Yeah, I can talk to Richard, but I'll also raise that with the executive, because as you can imagine, reports are being written all the time.
Yeah.
And if we need to get that box in earlier, I'll make those representations on your behalf, Chair.
Yeah.
Just before you move on, can with regard to Appendix A, which was the first report, I mean, obviously that's the report that's going to be considered by Cabinet on Tuesday. Does the committee support the recommendation in that paper?
I think so. I mean, it's, you know, I don't think no one is. I can see everybody nodding, so the answer is yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Riddle would like to speak, so go ahead, John.
Thank you, Jeff. Just to say, yes, you know, I do recognise that there's an ambition to perhaps try and include Druridge Bay in the future. I just want to make it clear that I haven't influenced David in any way in his professional opinion that we should wait at the moment. It does seem like the sensible thing to do. The Glover report seems to be taking a long time for actions actually to happen from it at the moment, but I suppose that's not surprising. Liz Dunn raised a very good point about the buses and the fact, you know, that a 56-seater bus is probably only going to be able to carry about 6 people at the moment, which seems ridiculous. And, you know, but actually Kath's paper about cycling and walking is even more important than ever. So, you know, I think we've got to think laterally as to how we can all get around. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So let us move on to that. I'm sorry for missing that, Sean, but we're all content with Appendix A, and we've accepted David's recommendation that we wait.
Okay, I'll prepare a report for Cabinet in that vein.
Excellent, thank you. So the next thing is our way vision for cycling and walking in Northumberland. We have Kath Homer and Stuart McNaughton, and I think it's Kath first and then Stuart doing all the heavy lifting, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. So hello everybody, I hope you're all well. If you thought you couldn't see anybody, I'm on a council iPad, so I can see just 6 people and the rest of you are faded into the background. So if any signalling or anything like that, please, somebody from Democratic Services, do let me know. Just in terms of cycling and walking, I've always been of the belief that if any county lends itself to cycling and walking, it's our county. And there's a lot of work been going on in the background for quite some time now, but I'm particularly delighted to bring this strategy to you on the Scrutiny Committee today as a joint piece of work between Northumberland County Council and the Northumberland Cycling and Walking Board. And you've got the details in the paper of which organisations make up that board. And just before I sort of start, I just want to take the opportunity, rightly or wrongly, just to say a bit of a thank you to the officers who've worked on this, because it has been a huge piece of work in bringing together everybody's views from that board and putting it into this strategy. Also preparing the delivery plan and all of the work that's going on behind the scenes, really, in terms of the, some people call them LC whips, some people call them else whips, but the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, and I know some of you have been involved in the consultations on those. So the overall aim is to facilitate and encourage more people to cycle and walk, and it's more people of all ages, all abilities, all circumstances, and in every area of the county. So it's no mean feat. I'm going to assume that you've read the report already, and the report should give you the background, the vision of the Cycling and Walking Board, the evidence of how we've arrived at this point, and information on potential funding streams to take this forward. So I'm going to hand over to Stuart, who will be able to give you the technical side of this, but if you have got any questions, then obviously please do shout up to myself or Stuart. Thank you.
Okay then, Stuart, you're on.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Homer. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Kath's been through, Councillor Homer's been through quite a bit of the detail there, but I can pick up on a couple of the issues to draw your attention to. So within the vision, we want more people to walk and cycle more often. And that's, we've linked that to a series of very ambitious outcomes as to how we would monitor the impact of the plan. And we split that down into 4 goals. The first being sustainable towns, and that's largely focused around the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans. And I think, as Councillor Homer mentioned, most of you will have been involved in the consultation if you have towns that have been developing the LC whip. So that's been a really solid process. In the last couple of weeks, we've now finished all 12. So all 12 are completing their draft format for to take through an approval process. And we, about 3 or 4 months ago, we shared a couple of early drafts with the DFT just to get their view in terms of the direction of travel we're taking on those LC whips. And the feedback was hugely positive. So that's given us quite a bit of confidence that we're heading in the right direction with those. The second goal was active place. And that's largely, you know, continuing the business as usual work of a lot of people in my team in terms of engaging with schools on a day-to-day basis, in terms of travel planning, in terms of marketing initiatives to encourage people in the school to walk and cycle more, to do it safely, so the future in terms of the people who are going to walk and cycle in the future. And that's really important. So we're continuing to do that, as well as engaging with people in businesses in terms of ensuring they have the facilities within their business to provide people with the opportunity to walk and cycle to and from work. The third goal is quality ways, and that's more, so the first two goals were largely focused on the urban areas of the county. The third goal in terms of quality ways, that's more in terms of the recreation and the longer distance paths we're looking to get in place or improve upon, and that's connecting a lot of the towns across the county, but also further afield into the national park and what have you. So that's with a view to really establishing Northumberland as a real primary destination for cycling for both national and international visitors. I think there's a real opportunity to build on that with the fantastic destination we have here. And in terms of vision, goal 4, inspiration and support, that's in terms of raising the profile of walking and cycling across the county. And as I say, the infrastructure delivery plan is emerging from that. We've drawn on the experience and the aspirations of everyone on the walking and cycling board to get their views on what should be in that delivery plan. Many of the responsibilities for delivering elements of that plan will sit with the County Council, but what we've been keen to do is make sure that the Walking and Cycling Delivery Board takes a collective responsibility in terms of delivering on some of those aspirations, so all the actions don't sit with us. So I think that's quite important. Councillor Somers referenced some of the funding available in terms of the significant input we've put in terms of the local transport plan funding this year and in future years. We're always looking, and the LC whips will help us to do this in terms of identifying infrastructure improvements that we need to put in place that we can draw on Section 106 funding as applications come forward. So all the funding that also comes from the private sector, which is really important. And also, as and when they come forward, we'll be well placed to bid for government for some of the bigger funding streams that we need to access for some of the larger improvements. And finally, I'll pick up on the point that was raised in the previous paper around COVID-19 and what the impact does that have on the policy we're developing just now. And I think in terms of walking and cycling, it only strengthens the aspiration and the aims we're looking to achieve by this. It only provides further justification for us to invest in walking and cycling. So I don't think the strategy as drafted necessarily requires a review. It just that the current situation provides a further justification for us to continue to invest in walking and cycling. So I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Anyone wish to question Councillor Heppel?
Right, so thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of comments, really. I mean, first of all, can I say I'm hugely in favour of this policy strategy. And I think it's vitally important in terms of not only health and climate, but other things as well. So I'm hugely in favour of it. Cramlington, by its very design, has a number of cycleways, parks and open spaces. And in fact, it was probably an easy testing ground. It was easy to adopt this kind of approach and this kind of strategy. Unfortunately, there's been a fair degree of criticism, particularly on social media. Questions I've had are things like, what are all these black pools that have suddenly appeared on walkways and cycleways? That suggests to me that there's some problem in terms of the comm side here. I think people aren't getting the message effectively. So I think that needs to be looked at. And the other point I think I would like to make is, in terms of how do you measure you've achieved success in this? So the kind of metrics you use there are quite important. I haven't seen those, but I assume they're built into the report, into that strategy and that plan. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Heppel. In terms of picking up on those, yeah, I think that's important in terms of the comms that we pick up around this, and it's even more important now, as I'll go on to. But a lot of the funding sources that come forward from central government, there's a focus on the capital capital funds, and we really need to ensure that we can access some revenue funding to provide that comms around it. We do a lot with schools, and that provides an element of it. But you're right in terms of engaging with other people who can and would wish to cycle, in terms of what we're promoting out there and how we can encourage people to do it and do it more often and do it more safely. And I think the last 3 months, when we've seen certainly anecdotal evidence that there are more people out and about cycling, given that they've been working from home, stuck in home, that's their only form of exercise during the day. I think we've got a huge captive audience there of people who have never cycled before, and it's how we engage with those people, how we understand why they're cycling where they are. Do they wish to continue cycling when we come out of this lockdown? What do they need in place for them to continue cycling? So I think that's something we really need to understand going forward. So we're giving some thought as to how we can do that and how we can access the funding and resource to help us, because that is really important. We feel quite strongly about that. And in terms of the metrics, I think a lot of the aims within the strategy are hugely ambitious, and I think, and we debated this quite a lot in Walking and Cycling Board in terms of how ambitious we make these aims. And I think at the end we concluded that we have to be absolutely very ambitious. And I'm conscious that in certain areas it is quite difficult to monitor the success of that, because it can be potentially hugely expensive data collection exercises to pull that together. But certainly in terms of the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, there is a huge evidence base that we've collected in there. There's the propensity to cycle tool. So there is evidence out there as to who is cycling, where they're cycling from and where they're cycling to, what routes they're taking. So there is evidence out there that we can draw on. But to be honest, it's a limited as to how far we can take that, because it's finding that balance between having real strong data across the county, because it's hugely expensive and there'll always be holes in that data against what we can draw on. But there's and even with I think it's obvious of the health benefits of walking and cycling in terms of a decrease in hospital appointments, a decrease in obesity, but it's very difficult to make that causal link between that and cycling. So the evidence is out there, and I guess at a national level you can probably have strong to drill down into the Northumberland level, but we'll look to draw on as much data sources as we can.
Are you all right with that, Councillor Hettle?
Yeah, that's fine. Can I just make one suggestion in terms of
before we go, I just say I've got Councillor Dunn and then Councillor Carr.
I'll be very quick, Chair.
Just trying to make certain everybody knows I'm watching.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Sorry. One of the suggestions, possibly in terms of getting some kind of qualitative feedback, might be to promote this on town and parish council websites and asking for feedback directly from them. And they can actually broadcast that to the local people in that town or parish.
I think probably what we will do, and obviously going to discuss this through the appropriate channels, but I think once we've got the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans finalised and ready, we'll go out to consultation on those, and it'll be locally focused consultations. So we'll certainly engage with the town and parish councils and other communication channels within each locale. And also as part of that process, we can tag on the Our Way vision, so we can give consultees the wider perspective on what it is we're looking to do. But yeah, once we get that consultation, and given the fairly focused nature of what we're trying to do, and given the current situation, that's almost certainly not going to be face-to-face consultation. So I have been talking to the communication teams internally within Northumberland as to how we can best do that virtually. And there is some great kit out there that can get some really good feedback. But so yeah, there's opportunities out there for us to do that.
Okay, is that all right, Alan? Yeah. And then we've got Councillor Dunn, Councillor Carty, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Gallagher. So it's Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think it's really obvious that the way we travel after this coronavirus is, well, over, if we can say that, will really change. And this report very clearly sets out the aim of enhancing cycling and walking within our main town areas. But my question is it a priority to create accessible walking and cycling routes between villages, places that aren't main towns? Could this be achieved by just changing existing public rights of ways? Sort of increasing or sort of improving the surface areas, that sort of thing? And will there be money available for that?
I think initially the priority is in the main towns, because in terms of accessing funding, that's where the opportunities are. But you're right, we very quickly need to move on to movements between the smaller villages. And I guess the challenge lies therein in terms of, is it accessing private land, and can we get access to that private land? What type of surfacing is required? Because there's particularly in the more rural areas, there's a whole range of aspirations for people who require or wish for a tarmac surfaces out in the rural area. There's people who don't want the tarmac, they want it as rustic as possible. There's things in between, but certainly when you get into the more rural areas, in terms of providing those paths of a quality surface, gets hugely expensive. But I think one thing we can look at is certainly the signage to direct people to what the best routes are, and then we can, but that's certainly something we're looking to do.
Is that all right, Councillor Dunn? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I've already had one thing in the local transport plan that was knocked back. So I suppose my question is it worth coming back with these, especially as this scheme had outside funding coming with it?
Jeff, can I come in?
Yeah, I was going to say,
I
Councillor Dunn finish and then bring you in, Councillor Homer. It's a bit of a juggling act, but go on, carry on.
There's so many different elements, I think, as we've read in the report, to cycling and walking. And I think one of the things for me, it's a progressive process. So we've started with the 12 main towns in the county. We've got to a point with those. We've submitted those to DFT, and as Stuart said, we've had a very favourable response. The next priority that we're already working on is then how we link those towns. But it won't stop there. And, through some of the investment that we'll have through the Borderlands and north of Tyne and so on, cycling and walking will be part of that, and therefore it'll be linking, attraction to attraction or area to area. So I think it's quite a complex picture that will evolve over time. Like all these things, it won't kind of happen tomorrow, but there are funding sources out there, and I think the will is, to go as fast and effectively as we possibly can. So I think all of that will happen. It'll just be a progressive process with it.
All right, Councillor Dunn, you happy with that? Anything else to say? Councillor Carty.
Hiya. I've just got 3 points, and I'll say the 3 points and then get a response. I know you're looking at all the cycle routes and the walking and everything, but what are you going to do to try and encourage employers to join up to the cycle to work schemes? There's loads of schemes out there where employers can get discounts for employees to cycle to work. They're quite good schemes as well. You can get quite a lot of money knocked off a bike, so that's one thing. Regarding the parking of bikes, right, it's railway stations and town centres. The bike racks are absolutely not that good, because anybody could snip a bike lock and pinch a bike. In Holland and that, they have like these proper individual bike sheds where people park in. They might be a little bit more expensive, but it might be worth looking at something like that for safety reasons, because obviously if you've got a bike that's 3,000 quid, you just don't want to chain it somewhere and not feel it's really secure. And the third thing is about biking to school and things like that. Now in Blythe, we've got some cycle tracks, but then all of a sudden the cycle track will end. For instance, I cycled the other way the other day, and I was out on a cycle track, brilliant. And all of a sudden, the cycle track on one of the busiest roads in Blythe came to an end, right? And I found myself thinking, oh my God, I've got to go down this really busy street, loads of cars parked. What are we going to do to join it up? Because on that busy road, one of the schools is just on the off streets of it. If you're going to encourage children to go to school, we really need to look at the safety of how they're going to go to school across the busy roads that don't have cycle paths.
And well, you've huffed him because he's left the meeting, Councillor Carty. So we'll just have to wait. So should we have Kath Homer till Stuart reappear?
I think on the issue of cycle paths that end suddenly, I mean, that's one of the things that the infrastructure plans have picked up, and we've done a consultation on the one in Blythe and Ashington and so forth, and it's that will then form, part investment from external sources, like 106 money, where there's developments like DFT money, but also from the local transport plan, so that should all be picked up. With regard to sheds and bike storage, I mean, in Hexham, we have the Sheffield bike stands. Hexham's got a huge conservation zone. Sheds would be really difficult to put in there. It took me a while to find a wall that I could put a defibrillator on. Each town has got to have a different approach. Some will need it, some won't. And I think that infrastructure really will come as part of that, and it'll be very much on a sort of area by area basis of what you think the town, what a town needs. And as for employers are concerned, all we could do is just keep on putting the message out. I think the advertising of cycling and walking, yes, it'll be on the council website. Yes, it'll, if town and parish councils will continue that communication, and that's fantastic. But it'll also be on our Visit Northumberland website, because it's a huge thing for people who are visiting the county as well. So I think, the more we can get the message out, the better, really, with all of that. We can't make employers do these schemes, but we can keep on telling them. And obviously, the county council has the scheme. I mean, I've benefited from it myself with other employment. So, we just got to keep on plugging away at the message, I think.
Stuart, Councillor Homer did a wonderful job of filling while you were away. So I don't know
whether it's quite a difficult question.
We missed you.
I don't think there would be. Yeah, I'm sure Councillor Homer covered that point. Yeah, and I think in terms of the employers, one thing we do is as a regular newsletter to schools in terms of what we're doing in encouraging the school kids to walk and cycle more safely. The prizes that we can give to schools for doing things. So in terms of perhaps there's an opportunity to think about a similar type of newsletter that we can send out to our major employers electronically. So that's something we can give some thought to, because as Councillor Homer says, we can't force them, but perhaps we can give some more thought to how we strengthen the message.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Gibson.
Right. Yeah, just a few things. I think, first of all, the recreational stuff we've got in the county is first class. And I mean, was it the Limestone Way that opened up 3 years ago-ish? Is it the Limestone Way cycle track? I don't know.
Yes.
Well,
Limestone Way.
It's Berwick to Hexham, roughly. And I think that's been a great success. But I'm afraid there is always a but in this. And I've looked at one or two of these things, and it's actually the work and school, and that's for walking and cycling. I mean, if anybody wanted to walk to work from, for instance, where I'm sitting now in Humshalf, it's a very unpleasant walk. There is no footpath on the side of an A road, and the whole point of really saying this is that we've got huge problems. I mean, I get emails from, I had a long one from someone in Wall not so long ago saying, why don't we put cones along the roadside, so that people could cycle in the cones? But of course, you can't possibly do that, because if you've got two wagons, which there are plenty of them going backwards and forwards to the quarries and Kielder Forest, etc., you've got a real problem. And I just think of cost all the time. On a long-term basis, you're only going to be able to get over this problem if you buy some land on the roadside, and I can never see how that's going to happen. But I have to say, I mean, it isn't the greatest place for cycling. So we've got Brunton Bank on one side and we've got Walwick Bank on the other side. So I mean, you've got to be a really good and fit cyclist to be able to manage those to start with. But there are other places to go, and but most of the people, the keen cyclists in this village, also have roof racks, and they take their bikes elsewhere. And you know, and you can't blame them. I personally would not drive or walk. Sorry, not cycle or walk to Hexham or most of the other places around here. Find the village, all the rest of it. But so that's how I feel, and you know, it's going to be a huge amount of money to get it all sorted out, and I'm not quite sure. I can't see that in my own mind where that's going to happen. But as I say, recreationally, it's fantastic.
I'm not sure there was a question there, Councillor Gibson, but if Stuart or Kath wanted to comment, I'd be quite happy to take that.
The question is, what is the long-term possibility of getting some of this stuff sorted out? I mean, are we looking to be able to get huge grants from central government in the nearish future?
Haven't got any money left, but anyway, Stuart, do you want to,
I mean, I guess in terms of some of the more rural areas that have got no footpaths and what have you, in terms of buying land to create these footpaths, I'd struggle to see the justification or the business case or the benefit of doing that. I guess the point you raised in terms of, you know, steep hills and longer distances discouraging people from cycling, I think what I see in the next 2 to 3 years as a real game changer in that respect is electronic bikes. And they're really coming forward. You know, from 2 years ago in a bike shop, you'd see maybe 1 or 2 e-bikes. The last time I was there, just in February, March time, it was probably half the bikes in the bike shop were e-bikes. I don't know if any of you have ever tried an e-bike, but I would certainly recommend it in terms of those people who are not confident cycling longer distances or cycling steep gradients. You know, it's a huge change, a huge opportunity that we should be looking to get that, to encourage those people who wish to cycle longer distances or steeper hills and don't have the confidence to do so.
Okay, Kath, did you want to comment?
No, I haven't really got anything to add to what Stuart said there. He's quite right. And there has been an awful lot of demand increase in electric bikes, and I can't see that going anywhere. I think Rupert's just put himself down as a measure of success on the delivery plan. So if we can get Rupert cycling, we've obviously done something right. There's a challenge.
Rupert, did you need to come back before being Brian in, or are you content?
Hang on.
You're on.
Oh, I'm on. All I would say is, I know Fido. I don't know if anybody will get that, but...
Well, on that cryptic note, we'll bring Councillor Gallagher in.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I would like to welcome this report. It's an excellent piece of work, and it's been worked on by this council and previous councils to bring a policy forward for Northumberland. I do agree that there will be more people active, and after this COVID-19, I think there'll be an extra increase. So the report is obviously been written from past experience, present plan, but I think that in the future we might have to tweak it again, looking at the COVID-19 around new planning. My concern is that there's 2 ways that we can look at this. One is town centres, and the reason for that is I think more and more people will come into the town centres. I can only speak for Ashington and the southeast part of my experiences, where we've got people that are on pathways that really need to be educated. They need to be respectful. We've got a lot of older people that will be on those paths. So I think that there's got to be a course of direction of education, especially the younger ones, going into schools and saying, look, there are other people using these paths. It's not just your path. Taking in mind that elderly people they're losing their sight and losing their hearing, so they're not going to be as active. The other thing was basically the roadsides, and Rupert picked up a point. In the southeast part, and I can only use the roads that I use, the Linemouth Road into Ashington and maybe the Spine Road. We've still got continuous cyclists that use the main roads instead of the cycle paths that were put there. And I think there's an element of responsibility. You know, if they're going to do that, you know, it's their responsibility. Because I'm more thinking that if there's an accident on a main road, for example, a pothole, where a cyclist falls over and goes into the ongoing traffic, you know, who is liable for that? You know, especially when we as a council have put the path there for them to use. Coming back to those paths, I think that there's got to be, dare I say, an inspection or a regular inspection. The people have got to want to use them. And the biggest complaints that I've got are that they're not being swept, they're not being maintained, the hedge lines are overgrown. So the reality is they will use the road. So a policy to bring forward the maintenance of those particular routes would be fantastic. And coming back to Stuart's point about electric bikes as well, electric bikes are very similar to electric cars. We have to have a policy of putting forward some charging points around the areas. Now, if that has to be in the town centres, if it has to be on our coastal routes, if it has to be in the country, you know, that's a policy that we need to look at separately, and not just have them, dare I say, they should be in designated areas, put it that way, so that there shouldn't be any issues or problems around vandalism. Thank you, Chair.
Stuart, Kath, do you want to come back on that? Kath first, maybe?
I don't think I've really got anything. I mean, one of the things that the Cycling and Walking Board were really clear about was about how we communicate the message, and I think that's absolutely key on a number of different fronts. You know, there's the message about getting out and walking rather than driving everywhere, you know, and all the health and well-being benefits that come with this, but also all the green agenda and so on and so forth. It all needs to be part of a continual strong messaging campaign, really, and that goes as well about being courteous, whether you're the driver or whether you're the cyclist or whether you're the walker. So I think it's all part and parcel of that we'll be considering.
Okay, thanks for that. Stuart, did you want to?
Yeah, I think that's just a common theme that's been, I perhaps anticipate that this discussion would perhaps be all about the capital infrastructure would be put in place, but a common theme that really seems to be coming out of this discussion is more around the comms and the education, and that's really positive and welcome. So I think, in terms of that message of do it, but do it safely and do it respectfully is quite a strong one that we need to give some thought to, and also take the point in terms of, as these cycle paths become more and more prevalent across the county, we need to make sure that they are clear, they are maintained, and they are swept to encourage people to continue to use them. Absolutely.
Great.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else? Sean, do you see anybody that I can't see indicating?
No.
No, everybody's covered.
Well, I would just say a couple of things. Again, like most of us, I'm quite impressed by the document. Nice and bright, and big photographs of stock photographs of people smiling, which is always a nice thing, isn't it? And what disappointed me was it took me all the way to page 11 to find something to bitch on about. So, well done. And it's basically the aspirations for 2020. I was just a bit, this is page 11, it's in a box entitled Aspirations for 2025. And the second one is the majority of journeys in Northumberland under a mile will be walked and under 5 miles will be cycled. Now, I don't see how you can know what that is now. I don't see how you can, what you're going to use to measure it, and how you're going to be able to say you've done that. So I just do not understand how you're going to be able to say by 2025 this is done. And the other one is Northumberland will have the highest level of active travels to school and the lowest school run congestion in the UK. Now, when you think about the fact that more than half of the kids who live in Northumberland and go to school actually live in a rural area, not the 2% of the area of southeast, that I don't see how you can even begin to, how are those kids cast across the north and the west going to be able to get to school unless they get on, the parents take them, or unless they get on a bus. You know, I just don't see, I do not see that it's being a realistic goal at all. And I just wanted then to carry on from what Brian was saying about people, cyclists on roads instead of paths. It absolutely boils me. What Laverick Hall Road is a typical example. I think I've probably mentioned it before, where there is a fantastically well maintained, clear, properly made cycle track that is running parallel to the road, and people use the road, and it infuriates people. So there has to be some kind of, if we are going to get more people to cycle, then there has to be some kind of education program or some certificate or some exam people have to take. And I realize, you know, it's not against the law or anything like that, but it's not only infuriating, it's dangerous. And people see we've spent Lord knows how many hundreds of thousands of pounds on that path, particularly up Laverick Hall Road. And people who drive cars, their taxes are paid for that, and nobody uses it. It is definitely something that people get annoyed about. The other thing I wanted to just bring up, it's a cycling and walking strategy, which is absolutely fine, but walking and cyclists don't mix very well, and would just need to be, I think somebody mentioned it before about being courteous. There needs to be some learning done. It isn't just the point of getting on a bike and learning how to ride it without falling off. It is like when you're in a car, you need to be aware all the time of what's going on around you, because, you know, you're driving something that can kill people. Well, cyclists are driving something that can do real damage to people if they crash into them. And I walk my dog up the Eve Black Way virtually every day. I've got you, Councillor Carty. I walk the dog up there every day, and the amount of challenge there is between the cyclists and people walking small kids and just in trying to enjoy their day is, you know, is quite a challenge. So the strategy is great, the words are great, the layout's great, but I just think we need to be thinking of how we get cyclists to use the facilities they're being given and use them responsibly when you know, for instance, that Eve Black Way is always going to have people on it, always. And the last thing I'll say before I bring Councillor Carty in is the thing about we're going to spend millions and millions of pounds on putting cycle tracks in, and we're going to be using one of the most unenvironmentally friendly materials to surface them. I just hope that we are using the least polluting surface finishes that we can possibly get. You know, and if it costs us more, instead of 1,000 miles, we only get 800 miles. I would rather have the 800 miles built with sensibly sourced, environmentally low impact material that we can possibly get, because otherwise we're just shifting the carbon impact from one part of the process to another. Councillor Carty.
Hiya, Jeff. Yeah, I think there does need to be more respect on the cycle paths, but by pedestrians just as much as cyclists. When I use the Black Walkway quite a lot with my cycle, I always ring my bell. I'm always courteous for people. 3 times over the past few weeks, I've been verbally abused on that cycle track with a couple on the cycle track saying, "Don't move for her, don't move for her." You know, So I think it's across the board. It has to be education for pedestrians as well as cyclists. And I just think it's not just cyclists. I mean, you can be ringing the bell on your bike and people are walking around with earphones on. They don't hear you. So it's right across the board. This education's got to be taking place.
I agree. Anyone else got anything to say? Would Stuart or Kath like to come back on any of that?
I think a couple of points actually, Councillor Reid, in terms you've raised, in terms of the data on which we've based our aspiration for 2025 on. Some of that has come from census data and journey to work data information which we have, which forms the baseline. But in terms of census data, that's something we only collect 10 years. So we do need to consider alternative and cost-effective means of how we collect that. And there are things we can do in terms of hands-up surveys we do within schools, or if we do a significant infrastructure proposal within an area, we can do surveys within a cordon specific to that area to identify the impact that we're having by implementing that infrastructure. And that can provide a demonstration that by implementing something, a type of infrastructure, that can affect a certain percentage in modal shift. So we can demonstrate that the impact we can have by implementing infrastructure. But as you say, it is very difficult and hugely costly to do detailed surveys across the whole county to really drill down into the detail of the impact we're having. But there are mechanisms we can use to give local proxies as to the impact we're having. And again, in terms of that discussion there, I think, there is an education and a comms thing we need to give some thought to in terms of encouraging people to cycle, but understanding what they need in terms of the education to cycle safely. But also that respect element is coming out loud and clear as well in terms of all non-motorised road users. And I think in terms of some age groups and some, the people that are on the racers who refuse to use the cycle pass, are always going to stick to the road. I think that's a bit of a challenge to change them. But what we certainly can do is the cyclists of tomorrow, through the work we do in the schools, to make sure that we drill that into the kids, that they should be cycling safely on the cycle paths where available and showing some respect. So I think that's a key message. And in terms of probably final point, in terms of the point you raised about the materials we use for these cycle paths, I'm not a highways engineer under any stretch of the word, but I'm aware that there is a number of alternative surfacing that can be used, which are more environmentally friendly, some permeable surfacing. So there is materials out there that we can use and we can give some consideration to. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that, Stuart. Anyone else got anything else to say? Sean, is there anybody I can't see indicating? Are you?
No, looks like everybody's fine. Oh no, Christine.
Yeah, I can see Councillor Dunbar.
I'd just like to say it's a very good initiative and I fully support it. Crompton has a large cycle network and footpath. It is very well used and people are following advice on the black poles about being courteous and things. The information is put on them. So yeah, fully support it, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Right, so just to draw this to a close, are we all happy that the report is well written and gives us a good guideline towards where we're trying to get to in this program? Yes, I think we all are. So I think probably we need to be. Yes, we all approve of the report. Is there anything that we want to add about or suggest about COVID-19 proofed or anything like that? Are we all happy that Stuart will be taking that on board? It looks as though we are. Are we happy that we suggest something about education and the challenges that there are, that we have mixing people in bikes? Is that, yes, we're happy. Sean, is there something you can make up?
Well, there is something I can make up, yes. I mean, there are a few bullet points that were raised by members that I've noted down, and I will put that into a short report to Cabinet for you to present on Tuesday.
Right. Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I am happy with the report, with just the proviso of what my concerns were about in the first place, that it concentrates greatly on main towns. I'd like some sort of assurance in there that it's actually going to cascade down to villages and connecting villages.
I've got that point, Councillor Dunn. I've also got the point the Councillor Homer made in response to that as well. I will put that in the report.
Thank you.
Okay, right. So are we content then? As though we are. Excellent. The next item on the agenda is urgent business, which it doesn't appear to be any. So we shall ask for the live streaming to end now, and then in a few seconds' time,